Now, this specific habit is all around dedicating time for specific tasks that a recruiter and a sourcer does. I am so excited to have David Marr, a principal sourcer at Coalfire, joining us. He brings a wealth of experience and insights from his extensive career in recruitment, particularly in the technical sourcing domain. And like I said, our goal today is tapping into the habit of dedicating time for tasks as recruiters and sourcers. Effective time management is the backbone of success in recruitment, and enabling professionals to balance numerous responsibilities while maintaining high standards of candidates as well as stakeholder engagement. So without further ado, thank you so much for being a part of this webinar, David. And as we kick off, tell us a little bit about kind of your background, what you're currently doing, and get the audience up to speed.
Sure. So currently I am a principal sourcer, as you mentioned, for Coalfire. Coalfire is a information security consultancy that provides consulting services to medium to large clients across the globe. And I am focused on basically executive level through individual contributor roles that they have initiatives for, and get to do a lot of fun sourcing related activities. And started here in May. So
Fantastic. Before that, you were doing some contract work. And one of the quotes you said in the blog, you said it's easy for people to jump into the field. And when you're talking about field is recruiting, sourcing, but it's very taxing and grueling career path. Walk us through what's so grueling about this career path. And most people just don't stay in this field, and some people do. But walk us through what that looks like and what you meant by that quote.
so there's no, in my career, I've met a lot of different people, and myself included, that kind of just fell into recruiting. It's not like you went to school and, oh, I'm going to get a degree in recruiting, right? It's something that you explore after, you go into a different field that you thought you were going to do and end up in recruiting. The reason I say it's grueling and taxing is just the nature of what we do. We help change people's lives, right? We represent a company either directly or clients of the company that we work for, and ultimately find people that can perform the tasks that are needed in the roles and change their lives. But over time, you interact with lots of different people, and there's lots of different personalities and hiring managers and candidates, and it can be very draining because there's a lot of work that goes into placing someone. And in some cases, you don't necessarily get, you feel like you're expending energy without getting the original reason of why you did it, right? So like the joy or the like the, hey Dan, great job of placing so and so into this role, right? It's very grueling, and there's long hours and lots of work that happens behind the scenes, only to, in a lot of cases, have the door slammed in your face. And it's demoralizing to some people if they stay in it for a long period of time. This field is not for everybody. You have to be willing and able to put in the necessary work and dedication to mastering your craft. And I think you have to have the right motivations for why you do this. If you're doing this for selfish reasons, this is not a field for you.
For sure. Can you elaborate on why dedicating time for specific tasks is crucial in your success within the recruitment field? And that's either separating tasks for sourcing or maybe researching the role that you're working on. Walk us through how time management has made an impact in your career.
In the beginning, when I started in recruiting, I just was willy-nilly, and I just would kind of look to my boss and mentors of helping me learn how to do what I needed to do. But over time, I learned that I was wasting a lot of time going down, paths and doing tasks that really I didn't need to do. So time management is really important because it allows you to make the most usage of your time. You can, and unless you want to work 80-hour weeks, and I know many agency recruiters work a lot of hours, and corporate recruiters for that matter, or talent acquisition professionals. But if you focus on what's most important and the tasks that you really need to do, and you structure your calendar, use your calendar to make sure that you're identifying. Well, I guess I would say start with identifying what is the most important things that you have to accomplish each day, and then what are all the nice things that if you can accomplish them, you'll get to them. And then use your calendar wisely, so that way you can plan out and execute each of the tasks and priorities that you have for the day. But taking a step back and looking at it holistically, like, if I want to be successful in this role, what do I need to do, right? What am I measured on? What are my goals? And factor that in. There's a reason why companies use a performance plan and a structure that is very important for them to be able to align everything, your efforts and your resources, with the time and what you have. So by doing that, you're going to make progress in a lot faster of a fashion, and make sure that you're getting to all of the important priorities that you have when you're going through the recruiting and or sourcing life cycle.
So you just started a new role, and every company is a little bit differently. For the audience, if they are starting a new role, when they start, they have so many things coming, so many projects, so many recs. I got 30 recs that handed to me. What recommendations would you have for the audience to, you said prioritize what means the most. How does someone figure out what those priorities are, should be at the top, and how to manage that accordingly?
I think it starts with having good conversations with your management, your manager, your directors, your peers, and I think also having someone that's a mentor that can help you, that's further along in their career. They could work at the company you work for, or perhaps it's somebody you met through a conference or a webinar, or someone that you approach that you respect. But I think those are the things that are important to help you identify that and what's important. Because again, most of the companies will have different teams dedicated to certain tasks, and you're measured in certain ways. So to meet those goals that you're measured against, you want to make sure that you're adequately taking steps and doing what's needed to reach your desired results. And I think that in a lot of cases, when you're starting out, you may not know exactly what you need to do. But if you think you know what you need to do, make progress on it. Try something out, and be willing to make a mistake, fail forward, learn from your mistakes, and then use that knowledge and learning to get better. And I would recommend A/B testing your strategies and all the ideas and things that you come up with, so that way you can identify some lessons learned and make yourself more efficient.
For the audience, I want to throw something out there and give me an answer, throw an emoji or something like that. When you started a new job, everybody has performance reviews and goals set, whether it's quarterly, yearly goals, specifically towards what you're accomplished. And that's how you get metric on if you're going to be if you're doing a good job. Raise your hand if you only look at the performance reviews, or bring up those specific short-term and long-term goals 2 weeks before your performance review. Throw in the chat if you do that. Or on the flip side, do you use those goals that you set up with your hiring managers, your leaders, your recruiting managers, directors, and say, these are the goals, and continuously use that as a guide on how you're going to accomplish that with your weekly one-on-ones? For me, when I started as a new organization, I wanted to identify what those specific goals were, because that's how I was going to get metric done. So whether it's hires, time to fill metrics, whatever it may be. That was the book of truth of if I was going to be doing a good job. And sometimes I think the misconception is you start a new role and you want to get involved with so many different projects and you kind of get thrown into all these different things. So it looks like you're super busy, but then you come to your performance review and they say, okay, let's look at your specific goals. And you say, well, I was involved with this project and this project and this project, and I helped this person. But then they go back to your specific goals of, okay, how many hires did you get, or what specifically did you do? And you can't really speak on it because you were so far stretched and you didn't focus on the specific things that you needed to accomplish. Has anybody dealt with that? David, have you dealt with that in your experience? And walk us through some tactical steps that somebody can take to really drive the performance review into your daily tasks that you had to do daily.
So when I first started doing performance reviews, the company I worked for did it once a year, which I don't think is an adequate way of really measuring or being able to make adjustments if you need to throughout the year, especially if you have goals that were initially thought were going to be goals, but for whatever reason, they're no longer a priority, or you've put them on hold or whatever, right? So being able to shift and adapt, I think, is important. I think it's important to keep a journal, like a running log of what you work on and your notes and research and things that you do and whatnot, so you can quickly reference it. And one of those things that I would recommend that you capture is what your accomplishments and successes are. Because when you work on that project and you analyze and A/B test it, and it turns out that you saved the company $2 million, that's a significant accomplishment that I would want to put in my performance review, because that contributes directly the value add that you bring to the company and the savings and so forth.
Awesome. We had a question in the chat. It said, what is the process for identifying what the most important tasks are, especially when sometimes everything can feel important?
So I would, as part of joining a new organization and getting to know your colleagues and leaders and business partners and so forth, or clients, I would take notes from all the conversations you have and come up with a series of questions that's going to help you identify what's truly important and what isn't. And if everything ultimately is important, quote unquote, then test it out, right? So see what's actually important based upon what the goals and what's measured. Because if it's important and it's something that leadership wants to track, then there's going to be a measurement behind it. So kind of work backwards from what you're being tasked with or measured against.
Awesome. In your blog, you had a quote around, let me read it. It says, you have to learn how to take pain and rejection and failure and be the person that gets blamed for things that don't go your way on a regular basis. Can you elaborate what you meant by that quote? Because personally, I think the recruiting and sourcing community has had a lot of pain, rejection, and failure in the last couple of years. And how do you pivot out of some of that, or how do you cope with that?
So for me personally, I focus on what I can control, and that's my response to things. But to answer your initial question about what I meant by that is, when you work in this field long enough, you will run into a lot of situations where you're asked to do something and you put in the effort and work, and find the perfect candidate, quote unquote, that they want to hire, and then something blows up and you get blamed for it not working. Sometimes it's due to changes in leadership or processes, or hiring managers that are newer to hiring, or it could be strong personalities. And there's a saying, poop rolls downhill. And as you're in a department, if you're aligned with that project, something went wrong or horribly wrong, you could take the blame. So you kind of have to learn how to not focus on the negatives, but take into account, and if you failed, own up for the failure, and use it as a opportunity to learn and improve and make changes, right? If you're doing, there's a definition of insanity, and I see a lot of recruiters or people that work in the recruiting field, aligning with it. And it's basically expecting different results, doing the same thing over and over, right? That's the definition of insanity. And if you don't take the time to invest in your processes and making improvements in yourself, then you're going to miss out on development and growth. And sometimes you may be blessed with a great manager or peers, but I think that's why it's important to attend a lot of conferences and webinars, and not just virtually. If you can attend things in person, you absolutely should. At least once every so often. And there's a lot of great conferences and things out there, and ways that you can take training. And then there's also a lot of local things. So if you look on meetup.com or Facebook, there's a lot of local groups. Like I know there's one, for example, that was started by Larry Anderson in the greater Atlanta area. And they started it because they wanted to, network with local folks that are peers and, help each other out and learn and grow from each other. Because ultimately, look at talent acquisition as a recruiting family, right? Yes, we may work for different companies, but at the end of the day, we're all people and we all are professionals in the same space. And if you want to have an impact and be able to, change the directory of our profession, you have to take steps, unselfishly to invest in those that are coming behind you. And
The
And
no, go
some of
ahead.
the best people out there, you'll see them continuously doing that. And that's what I experienced when I went to a lot of conferences, and from, just getting involved and being encouraged to step up and, help invest in upskilling the next generation and passing the torch, so to speak.
So whether you're currently working or not currently working, sometimes I feel like the development only happens is if the company will send you there. And there's the personal growth needs to happen on your own, getting involved personally, especially people that have maybe got impacted by layoffs. That's when the most education and the most involvement you should start doing is if you are currently working, but the networking and the continuous education shouldn't stop once you have found that role or you're currently working right now. It should be a continuous thing. Walk me through how you had those conversations, maybe with your leaders, of saying, hey, I found a conference I'd like to attend. Or, for example, I threw in a couple resources that are obviously 100% free at Hire Easy. But what conversations have you had in your past and say, I want to dedicate specific time to personal development? And how do you get that backing from your leaders and saying, yeah, you can go there for 2 hours a day for the next couple of days to personal impact you?
So most companies that I've worked for have some level of investment in their employees' development. Some may have a monetary, like you have X amount of dollars every year that you can use to something that will help make improvements. And some people use it to take a college course or get a certification or attend conferences. So as you have your one-on-ones with your manager, I would be, if you come across something that really interests you, make a list of it and explore all avenues of being able to go, right? So if a company isn't able to afford or pay the way, perhaps it's something that you can invest in yourself. But if you know about it in advance, or you can get sponsored to go, or maybe try volunteering and being part of the conference, or being a speaker, and you might be able to get some of that taken care of. So there's creative ways of doing it. But even if, let's say, you can't go to physical events, there's a lot of virtual events that are out there, and webinars and things of that sort. And you just have to, you learn about them through having conversations with your fellow recruiters and sourcers. And that's how I've learned about them. And, there's too many people to name, but there's a myriad of folks that regularly are giving webinars, helping to share. I know a lot of people make time every week to help those that are, up and coming, to help answer questions, basically to invest in and whoever is looking for some help and guidance. So I know like a lot of people do it on like Fridays as an example.
Awesome. The interactions that I have within the TA community is specifically people that I value and I think that are making an impact. And like I said, David, you have put your soul and heart into impacting people trying to get back to work. You set specific scheduled time to do that to help everybody else out. Help me understand why you do that and why do you specifically put time aside to help other people grow in their career when you had literally don't get anything out of it?
I do it because I love this field, and I when I was impacted from a layoff, and it was devastating, and it was something that I internalized. And at first, I was like, "Why did this happen?" But once you get through that, and then you're like, "Okay, now it's time to look for another job," I guess. Then you kind of, first try to land yourself, right? Because if you can help if you land, then you're able, then your financial obligations and things of that sort are addressed, at least in the interim, while you try to help others. So the reason I started, or initially started helping former colleagues from Indeed, which is where I was impacted from. After that, I saw a lot of former colleagues that I'd worked with in other companies, and the greater community as a whole, just company after company, was laying off folks. And I had developed a lot of resources for myself over the years just to kind of know what's going on and be able to share job leads with former colleagues. And I saw a greater way of being able to put it to work. So the reason I do it is to basically help people that aren't able to find jobs, or that don't have the skills to find them to the level that I do, or haven't put in the work historically to get these types of leads. And there's a lot of people now that are also sharing leads, and there's numerous lists shared across LinkedIn that, if you are a job seeker, I would recommend connecting with the people on the list, and you'll see lots of job leads that are shared on a regular basis. But ultimately, I want the economy to turn around, and I want people, I want our profession to get back to work, and for those that are going to remain in talent acquisition, to find their next home, and for those that aren't, to be able to figure out what they want to do next, and perhaps do that as well.
One of the habits of an effective recruiter is dedicating time for tasks and dedicating time to do some of that. That's professional development, that's sourcing, that's one of the things that you hit on was stakeholder management. And how much time do you dedicate before you go into a meeting with those stakeholders in your intake call to research and be confident to build a relationship with those stakeholders and be a true business partner to them versus an order taker? What are some tips that way?
I think you should always start every search with research, because you want to have data to basically build a foundation, or lay out a foundation where you can make decisions based upon facts versus someone's gut feeling. When I started in recruiting, a lot of the work that was done and the way that we worked was based upon people's gut feelings. And while sometimes you would get the results, a lot of times you wasted a lot of time. And sometimes there's beliefs that you need to challenge. And I'm not saying to do it in a disrespectful fashion, but you need to challenge it with facts, and help make the ultimate best decision, right? Hiring managers ultimately make the decision of who they want to hire, right? We provide them with the best slate that aligns with what they claim, that what they say they need. Sometimes they don't know, they think they need things that they really don't, right? And you learn that either through research that you initially do, or as you're interviewing people, or through conversations and just basically experiences that you have. So as you go, you kind of learn, and you basically take your data, and you're like, okay, yes, you basically bringing it through like the scientific method, right? You're testing out your hypothesis. Is your hypothesis accurate, yes or no? And if so, then you keep moving in that direction. But I think a lot of it is A/B testing, and making sure that you have adequate data. So how much time does it take to get the amount of data you need to be well informed? I think it depends on how much research you've done, right? Historically in your career or in general. And if you don't know how to do research, there's a lot of great resources out there that you can learn to do that. There's some Facebook groups that focus on doing research for companies. And if you reach out to me, I can share some of those with you if you don't know. But I would say at least until you have a good baseline that you can build from. Doesn't mean you need to have like an encyclopedia of research, but at least if you have enough where you can talk intelligently and you have a good sense or good pulse on what's happening or what's important in the field or whatever data points you need, that you can intelligently talk about it or talk through the conversation pieces. A lot of people like to bring, sample profiles to an intake session, which I do think is a great idea. Sample profiles are a great way, and I learned this trick back in agency days. You take two extremes of the profile interpretations of the profile, and you figure out which way they gravitate towards, and that way okay, so this way is what I think the hiring manager is looking for. And sometimes you need to educate yourself on what it is that you're actually recruiting for, because we're not experts in every single field. But if you do the research and you think of yourself as a lifelong student, lifelong learner, you'll continue to grow and evolve and develop and mature and be able to be confident in your decisions, and you may go from an order taker into a true talent partner.
Love it. Um, as we wrap up, I know we're 1 minute over. Any last minute advice? Any practical things? Any tools? Any tips? Anything that you utilize to kind of schedule out your day or gives you the framework to dedicate time for specific tasks, whether it's relationship building, stakeholder management, sourcing, anything else that you utilize, tools, resources that you want to share?
I would say to make sure you're, educate yourself, read books on all sorts of different topics. Find yourself a mentor to develop your career. From a time management perspective, I think time blocking is probably one of the most efficient ways of doing it. But there's a lot of great books on time management, and there's a public library for a reason. If you are not someone that reads or you don't have the attention span, there's audiobooks, and while you're working, you can be listening to an audiobook. It's just a matter of figuring out a routine and a time that works best for you. And while you may be able to do some of it during your workday, there is a portion of time where you may have to do it on your personal time. So just build and structure your day where you're building that into how your week proceeds and unfolds. And that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. You mentioned, audiobooks and stuff like that. I just want to tell the audience that the new Speakeasy podcast dropped today, and it was with our special guest, David Marr, and he talks all through his journey of being laid off at Indeed and the transformation of when he landed his next role, how he put the effort into not just only helping himself, but impacting others along the way in that job search. It's a great, great, great listen. So like you said, throw on the headphones while you're working, put it on in the background and really hear from his story and how he's evolved and the true impact that he is making within the community. So there's the YouTube link. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, and really get involved too. And last thing is, if you haven't taken a step of being vulnerable, reaching out to folks within the community and say, hey, how can I help and impact the community? Because sometimes in our darkest moments, helping somebody else out gives us the light to see where we want to go to. So just want to say thank you again, David, for taking the time, jumping on this, giving some quick moments and quick applications to our recruiting career. And the next one will be next Tuesday, same time from 12 p.m. to 12:30 Central Time. So get involved. But like I said, connect with us. We'd love to help out as much as possible. But again, from everybody here at Hire Easy, I want to say thank you to the community and thank you, David, for joining us today.